Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode number 112 of the WP Café show with me, your host, Mark Wilkinson, and my co-host, as always, Keith Devon. Lovely to have you along. If you are joining us live on YouTube, then please jump into the chat. Let us know who you are, where you're listening from. It's always nice to see who is listening along with us. And if you've got any questions for us during the show, whether it's about the topics we have or whether it's probably something we can pick up at the end, then you can always put them in the chat. It's really nice to get some discussion going and so forth. If you're new here, WP Café is the show about WordPress development for small agencies and freelancers. It's basically the stuff we get on with every week, and we kind of talk about it on this show. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, do give this video a like. It really does help us out. And if you want to subscribe to the channel, that's even better. It goes out as a podcast as well, so you can always subscribe in your podcast player if you just want the audio only afterwards. Anyway, that's enough introductions. Let's get on with today's show. We've got a few topics to talk about. But as always, before we do that, how is your week, Keith? I know you've been a bit under the weather this week.
Yeah, I've been poorly. I just got hit like a truck on Sunday night with a cold, and then just totally wiped me out for a couple of days, and I'm still suffering a little bit today. Just a bit of a foggy head, a bit tired today, but yeah, so it's kind of thrown me a little bit this week. But apart from that, I'm doing very well. No complaints. Just trucking on. How are you?
Yeah, pretty good. I think I had the cold you had at Christmas. I think I mentioned last time, just in the Christmas holidays. So I know it was a pretty difficult one, but it's been a decent week this week. Lots of good stuff going on. Lots of frustrating things going on. If you've been following me on Twitter at WP Mark, I've been tweeting out some of the things that I've been struggling with, which I finally fixed, which we're going to talk about today. So
yes.
But week's been pretty good. I'm looking forward, finally, I hope, fingers crossed, to play some golf tomorrow, which I haven't played for it must be like 10, 12 weeks.
Yeah.
The forecast is for sunshine, cold, fingers crossed. We'll be able to get out there, so that'll be nice.
Good thing about golf, because I was thinking the same thing. Like, I'm a pretty keen cyclist, and I haven't been out much at all recently because it's been so icy and just like really, really cold. But I guess that doesn't affect the golf so much. You can get out in more weather than I can, probably.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, it's just when it's frosty, you play on like temporary greens because it damages the green if you're walking over the green on frost. So it's just like putting on concrete. It's ridiculous. But it's more about getting out there and having a swing and chatting with your mates and having a walk around in the sunshine. So that's what I'm more interested in.
Yeah, very good.
So that'd be good. And as you can probably tell, my desk is still broken. I'm still sat down. I haven't been able to, but I haven't even actually looked at it. I briefly looked at apparently you can buy a new, is it like a little transformer? There's like a block underneath that plugs in. And I don't even know why that's a problem though. So, I'll get around to it eventually. So there you go.
Very good.
Right. Topic number 1 in today's show is CSS nesting.
Yeah.
So, for the non-CSS people, put your hand up. That's me. What does that mean for a start?
Okay, so I don't know exactly when this was brought in. A couple of years ago, maybe. But CSS nesting is when you can place rules within rules, basically. So if I have in CSS, if I write div and open my curly brackets and write some style rules for the div. I can then put another element selector in there and say P, open the curly brackets, and I can style paragraph tags that sit within divs. So instead of, I think this came from preprocessors. So when Sass and Less and stuff came along, this is one of the big things is you could nest. So you don't need to rewrite the original parent rule selector every time. So that's just kind of implied once you're within the curly brackets, once it's nested.
So instead of writing div P something, you just start from P, can't you? And then
because the div is effectively prepended to everything that you do from then on. So it's kind of like scoping, sort of. But in a really efficient way. So that's been a thing, and it's been the way that I write SCSS for a long time. There are some actually drawbacks to it. I won't get into that. But on this project, I decided I was going to try to do everything without a preprocessor. I just wanted to write CSS again, and I knew that nesting had been brought in, so I thought, "Ooh, cool! So I can do that. That's something I can do." One of the main features of the preprocessors. So yeah, and I did it, and I've used it, and it works really nicely until it doesn't. Until someone's using an old iPad with Safari 16.0.
So just
none of my CSS rules get output. So, yeah.
Just to confirm then, so because I remember back in the day when I used to use SCSS, which I think we call SAS, don't we? I think
SAS is actually different, but yeah.
Oh, is it right? So that was one of the sort of like benefits of using that, so you could do that. So is CSS nesting, is it kind of exactly the same as that? You can just do the same thing, or is there anything different with CSS nesting?
I'm sure there is. I'm sure there are a few differences, but effectively, it's exactly how I used to use it, even to the point where you can use the ampersand operator within it, which is going to be very, very hard for me to explain with words, so I'm not even going to try. But if you're interested in that, look it up, and it's really useful. And I actually, whenever I was working on this project, I didn't know that was available. And that's really powerful. Once you can use that, it's really, really powerful. So yes, effectively for the way I use it, it's got feature parity. But like I say, I'm now in the process of undoing it all.
So we had an email from a client that we built the school site from, that we've been talking about on the last few weeks, and the email had a screenshot in it. I say screenshot is like someone taking a screenshot of from the phone, taking a photo of their iPad. Does the job. And it kind of showed the main. It was two issues, wasn't there? There was the main menu of the site, which is like a little burger menu icon, was like empty, like there was no menu icon.
Yeah,
and then there actually was no menu. Like if you managed to open the menu it just showed three. I don't know why it showed three items, but it just showed three items, which is weird. And it's got loads of items that are nested underneath each other in like a child lists and things like that. So that was one problem. And then the other problem was that most of the pages have got like a sub navigation on them to show current other pages within the same section, if that makes sense. And they were just showing all the wrong pages. So, and they weren't styled. They were just like had bullet points next to them and all sorts. They were just.
That's what surprised me. I was like, why are they not even styled? Like,
So that we asked we didn't. We asked actually. We haven't had an answer actually as to what the actual iPad is running. But doing some investigations with Browser Stack, it seems that if you're running any sort of iPad OS or iOS that's less than a version in the 16s. Again, I don't quite know which version it is.
I think it's the Safari version. I don't know if they're linked directly to the iPad OS version, but it's Safari 16.4 and above supports nesting. I think off the top of my head.
Because when I think you were doing some testing in Browser Stack, and you were actually using like a 2020 iPad, which is only 4 years old, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it was running 16.3, and it wasn't working. Whereas I was testing with my physical iPad here, which is a 5th generation iPad, which is 2017, but it was running 16.67 or 16.7, the up-to-date version for whatever that iPad is, and it was fine. So it wasn't an issue with like a certain iPad. Like my iPad is quite old, but it would still work because it's updated. So it seems as though this person either has a really old iPad that doesn't support iOS 16.4, as in they can't update, or they have got an iPad that they haven't chosen to update to the level.
Yeah.
So that's the issue. So what are we doing about it?
Well, I'm going to look into unnesting all my CSS, and I found a tool that I found. My good friend Nick found it for me.
Nice.
Found a tool that kind of unnests your CSS, and I've just given it a go, and it doesn't work, annoyingly. So it does unnest everything, but it creates empty rules. So, for example, in the example we gave earlier, when I said div open curly brackets some styles, p open curly brackets some styles, if you didn't have any styles for the div, it would still output an empty selector.
Well, it's so like div curly braces that are empty.
Yes.
Right. Is that a problem?
Yeah. I mean, it won't break anything.
Could you run that by Bob and just say, can you just remove anything that's empty?
I was actually going to think my next experiment was just going to be to ask Bob to do it.
All right.
So
Bob, by the way, is ChatGPT. You didn't know who Bob was.
Yeah. So I was going to try that and just see if that works as well. I'm guessing probably will, because Bob is good at these things.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it is frustrating. It is frustrating because it just makes the CSS a lot more verbose. Like there's a lot more of it, because you need to kind of keep repeating those selectors. And whenever you're getting reasonably deep, with like multi-level selectors, then yeah, it just looks horrible. It's a bit more difficult to maintain. It's not quite as performant, although it'll be a minuscule amount of benefit there. So yeah, just a bit annoying.
So, question: Are you unnesting all of your CSS, or are you unnesting the CSS for just that menu?
No, I really have to, because actually, whenever I did start to test the site in that older version of Safari, lots of things are broken. So basically anything within the rule that isn't at the top level won't work.
Yeah, I understand.
So any of the nested rules just don't work at all. So quite a large chunk of my CSS isn't working at the minute, which is really frustrating.
So what I think might help people, or confuse them even more, is in our terms and conditions, we test our work in current versions of major desktop browsers, including Safari, Chrome, Edge, and Firefox. We also test with the latest versions of Safari on iOS, Chrome on iOS, and Chrome on Android, for which it all works. So I think it's probably worth saying, why are we fixing this for free? Because we said we're only going to be supporting the latest versions of the browsers.
Yeah, but it was my choice to use nested CSS, so I think that's the reason. I mean, you could say that something might be supported in all of the major browsers on the latest versions, and actually only have 50% global support. You wouldn't use it, So what's the cutoff? This particular feature sits at about, what did I say it was? 90%?
I'm looking on caniuse.com and it says 87.34% globally.
Yeah.
But then it says plus 3.86%. It's about 90%.
Yes, yeah. So I think it was about 90%, and I think that if 1 in 10 of your users are getting a really, really subpar experience, that's not good. That's not good enough. So I don't know what that number is. For me, it needs to be in the high 90s to be acceptable.
I think we were chatting briefly about this before, and it's worth mentioning to listeners. I think there's a couple of reasons why I think we've chosen to fix this. One of them, it was your decision to do it, which I think is, in hindsight, it probably should have been a different decision because of the number of users that it isn't supporting. So that's one reason. And then the other thing we said was that it seems like it isn't going to be a massive fix. And by that, I mean a 2-day job. So it would appear that, like, if this tool's done most of it and you can just go through and, or even Bob can produce something for you, it makes sense to do it like that and to keep the customer happy. I think if it turns out to be a bigger job, we will have to go back to the client and say, we're going to have to charge some money for this fix. We'll see, that is. But I think we want to do it for nothing because it was our decision to use the nested version of CSS.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting discussion because of what we had in our terms and conditions. I think we'll leave that in the terms and conditions because it's something that will help us out in the future, and it's a good clause to have. It doesn't mean to say stuff won't work in all the browsers. It just means to say that we're focusing on those up-to-date browsers.
Yeah, like previously we've had stuff that's come in and said this looks a bit weird in such and such a browser, or it doesn't look the same. And I've been able to use the progressive enhancement argument. It's like, that's a really old browser. It still works. You can still see the content. It just doesn't look as nice as on the current versions. And that's fine for me, but this is different. This is just like a mess.
You can't use it. Yeah, you can't. Yeah. It's different. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good. So, it will be good when it's fixed.
Little learning experience there.
Yeah. I think like clients email that over, don't they? And they panic because it doesn't work. But I think what you've got to remember is it's like for the vast majority of people, it is working fine. And obviously we will try and fix it for you. So we'll get there in the end, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yep. So CSS nesting, just something to be wary with if you are trying to use it without using something like SAS, which I presume SAS just writes all the correct rules and does it all for you once you compile it, doesn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. It basically does what I'm asking Bob or this other tool to do.
Yeah.
Which I'm currently asking Bob to do, and he's done it correctly.
Yeah. The quality of ChatGPT has come on so much.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
I've done a few things. This is not on my list to talk about, but I'm going to talk about it. So there's a few things I've asked it to do. I've literally just asked it to do something. So email comes through from the customer, says, we don't use Twitter anymore. So can we remove the social icon for Twitter? But we do have a WhatsApp channel that we use to communicate. So can we add a WhatsApp thing? So I looked at our code. On our code, we've got some SVGs. I don't know who generated them, whether it was yourself or whether we got them. I don't know where they've come from.
Yeah.
So I literally copied. So we had a Twitter and a LinkedIn and an Instagram SVG. We didn't have a WhatsApp one. So I literally copied the LinkedIn SVG code and I said to Bob, to ChatGPT, here is a LinkedIn icon that I've got. I want you to create me a WhatsApp one in the same style. Gave it the code, generated me an SVG. Looks absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
That was really cool. And then I had some jQuery code. Excuse me. That I said, can you convert to native JavaScript? Did a pretty good job. It was just one item that it missed off. It left it as a jQuery, what's it called? The jQuery selector, I think it calls it. So I ran the code in my browser and it didn't work. Gave Bob the error. And he just said, oh, yeah, sorry, that's still jQuery. I can't use that. And then just use this instead. So I just changed it and that worked. It's pretty clever. Can't hear you, Keith. I think you must have just...
I was just going to say, sorry, unjQuerying everything is a really cool use case for it.
Yeah.
I think. I just want to like go to something like Gravity Forms and just like unjQuery it for them. And just say, here it is. Please release this in your next version so we don't have to use jQuery anymore.
Yeah.
Anyway,
that wasn't on the list. Next on the list is my issue this week. So we are creating a new product or service to do with our job boards, which is trying to improve the SEO of the boards, as well as providing some user experience improvements as well. But essentially, it's more for an SEO sort of benefit. And as part of that product, I was using shortcodes to create some output that people can put into their templates. Now, the reason why we're using shortcodes is because the vast majority of all of the customers we deal with don't use full-site editing. So I think we've had one customer that's used full-site editing in the 5 years of running Job Relay and starting off with RecPress.
Yeah.
And full-site editing's been out for, someone will be able to tell me, feel like it's been out for 18 months at least. Block editor's been out for obviously like 5 or 6 years, and still people aren't using it. So we went for shortcodes because they kind of work with anything. So Like you can use do shortcode in a PHP template. I mean, you can just run the function, but you get the idea. You can use them in things like Elementor and Divi and those sorts of page builders. They accept like running shortcodes. And you can obviously also use them in full site editing because there's a shortcode block, so you can use them in there. So that's why we went for shortcodes, because they're most compatible with all of the different ways in which people create their sort of templates on their sites. So what I noticed was I was outputting, it outputs HTML, does the stuff. And obviously with the shortcode, you can't echo stuff, you have to return it. So that's how shortcodes work. So I was using a lot of sort of like output buffering and then buffering the content and then storing that in a variable and then outputting the variable.
Yeah.
And I kept getting what I thought was an empty paragraph tag being rendered in certain places in the output, which was also a bit random. So I did a load of debugging. Like a day and a half this took to debug this and mess around with it and ask questions. I asked on Twitter and people were suggesting things, like to turn off the WP Auto P filter. I tried that. I tried to do that like when I registered the shortcode. I tried to just do it globally for everything and it just still didn't seem to want to work. I then got to the point where I looked, instead of looking in the inspector, I looked at the page source of the page. And I noticed that actually it wasn't an empty paragraph tag. It had added a closing paragraph tag to a button and a link. That was it. So that's all it was doing. So if I took the button out of the markup or I took the link out of the markup, it was absolutely fine. So I then asked ChatGPT. I did all sorts of stuff. And one of the things that ChatGPT said was that if you've got an inline element, I presume a button and an A element are inline, it will try and do something with it. And I didn't really.
What will try to do something with it though?
I don't know, and this is what I still don't understand what is actually doing this. So I've kind of like, and I said it yesterday, it's like I've kind of fixed it, but it's more frustrating because I don't really know why I fixed it. I mean, I know what I've done to fix it, but I don't know what was causing it in the first place, essentially. So essentially, all I did was wrap these elements in a div, and it just works. And it stops outputting these paragraph tags. But that's what's so frustrating, is that I don't know what was causing it, and I don't really understand why it's happening.
Because the obvious thing that's causing that is WP Auto P.
Yes.
And if you had globally disabled that and tried disabling it on that specific shortcode, and that didn't fix it, I'm like, well, what's going on?
Yeah.
Did you ever? No, I was going to say, did you ever try globally disabling it and disabling it specifically on the shortcode?
Not sure. So I did like remove filter the content, WP filter, whatever. And then there's actually a function that I didn't even know about, which is called shortcode unauto P.
Yeah.
Which didn't work. And it's
so weird.
But the thing is, when I echoed my output, I dumped my output into my log file, as you do when you're debugging, right before it gets returned in the shortcode, there was no spaces in the markup. I'd stripped all the spaces and the line breaks out just to make sure that there was nothing that it could do. And there wasn't. When I outputted it there, it was like, there's no spaces. And there's definitely no paragraph tag there.
Yeah.
So it must be happening after that point. So it's got to be a filter running on something.
Why is WP Auto P run on the content?
I think it was for the old WYSIWYG because it didn't have paragraph tags, I think.
So why is it running in the block editor? Or is it because you're not?
I can't answer that. I don't, because there is paragraph tags in the block editor. Like when you write a paragraph,
but that's a block.
That's what I mean.
So because you're explicitly creating a paragraph block when you're writing in the block editor, whereas with the old WYSIWYG you were doing it with line breaks, which then get converted into paragraphs on the front end.
So
that's why I don't understand why we need to run WP Auto P on the content anymore.
it's probably a legacy thing for other things that rely on it. But I don't know is the answer to that. That's a good question.
Yeah. Well, and like you say, you tried turning it off and it didn't fix it.
Well, yeah, I don't know.
I mean,
yeah, strange. So then I got
strange.
there. I got to the fix, which is the annoying thing, and then so what's happening is it's my shortcode is querying for a post, and then it's rendering the content of the post at the top of the page using the shortcode and so on. So I got my fix done yesterday. Comes back to it today. Oh, it's back again. Empty paragraph tag at the bottom. What is going on here? So 2 hours later, I then go into the post that it's rendering, and there's a flipping empty paragraph tag in the content.
Yeah.
So I spent 2 hours trying to fix it again, and it was just in the bloody post, wasn't it? So anyway, I think it's fixed, which is interesting. But it is frustrating when stuff like that happens. Like,
so you fixed it, but you don't know what. You don't know what's causing it.
Well, I know why it's fixed, but I just don't know what's causing it in the first place.
Exactly.
Which is frustrating. But yeah, anyway,
yes.
so it's there, it's done, it's working. Fingers crossed. So that was.
And sorry if you've already mentioned this, but was it because inline level elements caused it rather than?
I believe so, because when I wrap them in a block level element, a div, did fine. Why Auto P would put an empty paragraph tag at the end of an inline element? That's what I don't know. Or if it's not WP Auto P, whatever it is,
what is it? Yeah.
Why would it think that I have to do that? But anyway, there you go. So, and again, I mean, the other thing I thought was that my shortcode is in a template, not a post. So I wonder if it's a bug, in WordPress. How many people have tested shortcodes in templates, not in actual posts or pages or whatever?
What do you mean by template? Like it
was the archive template of a post type.
Right, got you. Within full site editing.
Correct. So I'm in full site editing. I'm editing the template in full site editing. The other option is to sort of take this out of full site editing and then test it. Does it work in that sort of scenario? But the problem is my shortcode won't do anything in a page because of the way it works. It just renders nothing because of the way it's supposed to work. So it's hard to test it in a post.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm going to leave it there before I get really frustrated with it. It's working as it is now. So
I would.
We'll say that as a win.
Yeah.
So that was shortcodes. And then next on the list, unless anyone has any questions, is the WordPress project and the current state and the future. And I don't know. Have you any thoughts? Have you any feelings about what's going on? And we've never really covered this, but
yeah, I mean, we've sort of deliberately not covered this just because it's fairly toxic, and I felt like we weren't really massively qualified to talk to all the drama. We weren't that well informed. So yeah, we've kind of avoided all the drama recently, haven't we? And I will try to stay as kind of rational and stuff as possible and not get too ranty. But I've got mixed feelings on it at the moment. So I'm actually quite enjoying. I enjoyed building that last website. In the end, I found it reasonably frustrating at the start to get my head around some of the FSC stuff, some of the theme JSON stuff, some making some of the decisions we have to make about like what should be a block or a custom block, or should we use ACF, or how do we do these loops and queries and blah blah blah. But once we kind of made those decisions, I enjoyed it, and I feel like the product that we delivered for the client was a really good one.
Yeah. So some of those decisions that we made them like many times, like the card, for example. Yeah, let's use a block. No, let's not use a block. Let's use a block. Let's not use a block. And then we ended up deciding on a custom block.
Yeah.
And I'm at peace with that. Like I'm confident we made the right decision. And going forward on new projects, I know that's the right decision to do that. So that's like a good learning outcome from that project.
Yeah. Although speaking to my friend Mark earlier, he would have done that as a native custom block with PHP rendered with inner blocks. So anyway, that'd be interesting. There's different approaches, and this is actually one of the reasons I want to talk to some more people in the ecosystem on this podcast. I've tried to get Mark on, so we're good. We'll see if we can get Mark on. So in that sense, I was really happy with what we delivered. Some of it felt a bit hacky from our point of view, but I think from a client's point of view, it's a really, really nice solution. And it's just a million times better than the proprietary system they had before, and a lot better that I know than if we built it on Divi or Elementor or something like that. I just know this is a really good, like what we delivered was good. So in that sense, happy with where WordPress is at. I'm really not happy with how Matt Mullenweg is behaving. And that stresses me out a little bit because I think for various reasons. One, because I'm slightly worried about the future of WordPress. His recent, pulling his automatic sponsored contributions away from core and bringing them in-house on Automatic's paid products was, I don't know, it felt like a really immature retaliation rather than something that a leader should do. And I feel like he's acting in that way quite a lot. I feel like quite a lot of the posts I see are quite childish and immature and reactionary and inflammatory and disrespectful. And I don't like being part of a community and an ecosystem with that kind of leadership. And I worry about the future of the project under that kind of leadership. That said, I do think that Matt has the best interests of WordPress at heart, or he certainly did. What I worry about now is that he's so embattled and bitter that he might be prepared to throw it all under the bus just because he can. Yeah. That really worries me, that he's got his back to the wall and he's angry and he's pissed off with the community and he's just going to go, screw y'all. I'm bringing this all in house. You're on your own. And that worries me. It worries me for WordPress. It worries me for actually the open web. It worries me for Highways Digital, for our personal futures.
I was chatting about this with some other people last week, and this was raised, very much like what if, WordPress.org, for example, just goes away, like he's already said it's his personal website and it's not WordPress, and so on. So, but and people were suggesting, have you been looking at alternatives rather than working with WordPress? And Courtney says here, thanks, Courtney, would you offer your products and services outside of the WordPress ecosystem? Would that be better or worse for you? We're looking more and more at Laravel. And other people were saying the same, why going to look at other things? But I think, and I said this when we were having this conversation, was the benefit with WordPress, even if it all went away, our websites would still work. They wouldn't, be turned off. And in the conversation I was having, there was some chat about, people trying out Squarespace and Courtney mentions Laravel. I'm not sure I think you've got to build something on Laravel, haven't you? It's not like a WordPress.com or a Squarespace or a Wix or something like that. But if what's happening here in WordPress ecosystem happened in those platforms, then I would be worried, because if they get turned off, then your website doesn't work and you don't have access to it and you don't even own it. You know what I mean? So I'm less worried in that sense. In terms of like trying other things, I'm not averse to that at all.
Yeah.
But there's just no way I could build a website in SourceFlow or Craft or whatever that's anywhere near the level of what we can build in WordPress. So I can't really see why someone would hire me to do that. Because I can't. I could,
No, you could. That's the thing. We could figure out how to build websites on other platforms, and there would probably be, almost definitely be, compromises. There may be some advantages, obviously, but there may be some things that we can't do. But quite, there's a big market out there for fairly generic brochureware websites that we could definitely deliver on nearly any platform.
Yeah.
I still believe in WordPress as a kind of ecosystem. I believe it's the best tool. So I think until that changes, then I'll probably stick around.
I think the biggest thing for me, what I've learned is that WordPress.org is not part of the WordPress Foundation. I didn't really know that, really. And it's all one person's empire, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's at the whim of that person to do whatever they
Yeah.
want with it. I think that is kind of worrying.
Yeah.
And a true open source project probably shouldn't have that one person in command of everything in such a...
I don't mind the one person in command. I just think he's commanded it badly. Recently, I think Matt has made these problems himself.
Yeah.
You know, he has set up the governance and the structure in a certain way. He has set up the trademarks. He has set up WordPress.com. You know, he did that. He confused things. He is the one who... this was from a call I had this morning. This is someone else's insight. He is the one who employed all the core developers who were working either in their own time or for other companies, and he's the one that bought them all up. And then he's saying, "Oh, well, it's automatic has to do all the work." He wanted the control. He he bought those people, you know, to come in to continue working on WordPress, but for him to be able to have more say over what they do and what they work on. And then he turns around and says, "Oh, well, nobody else is contributing." I was like, "Matt, because you employed them all for a start."
Yeah, they're still contributing. They're just doing it under a different name.
Yeah, they're doing it. They're automatic employees. Like, that's why you're the biggest contributor. One of the reasons is because you bought all you bought them all out, and you make it like difficult for people to contribute. This whole argument of just contribute. It's not reality. It's like there are ways that we could probably do it, but the investment required and like just simple things like, why are we on SVN? My honest take on that is because it helps to gatekeep. He just doesn't want everyone contributing. He doesn't actually want that at all. He wants to be in control, but he's now thinking, "Oh, well, I'm having to spend all this money on core contributors. Well, that's not fair. So I'm going to shake down WP Engine and I'm going to shake down GoDaddy and whoever else." Like that's what's happened. This is his doing. He created the problems, maybe with good intentions, but he never seems to. He seems to like struggle to separate people's negative feedback on his kind of actions from his intentions. Like people are not happy about the way he is going about things at the minute. They're not unhappy with him as a person and his kind of like where he wants to take WordPress. I think we're all generally like behind Matt and his overall vision, but just not the way he's going about stuff.
A couple of comments. So Dan Westall, thanks for joining us. This situation has been building for years. I think WordPress needs to be less Matt.
It's not happening.
And then just agreeing with you really there that's that's the reason why he's, because of his contributions, have brought them all up and so on, he's the reason why he's successful. And that yes, SVN is sort of a bit of a gate. Maybe having a gate is actually a good thing though. Like otherwise you get everything involved. Maybe that's a good thing.
I think there's other ways to do gatekeep if you have to do it. But yeah, I mean, it's quite a clever one. If you think about it, it's gatekeeping without it needing to be a person doing the gatekeeping. It's like, let's put this bit of technology in the way that, only the people that are, maybe this is why it's a good reason. Maybe it's like only if you're really committed to committing to core or to contributing to core, are you going to want to kind of wrangle with SVN, and those are the people he wants. He wants the people that are willing to jump through those hoops. And there's something to be said for that, actually, as a tactic. But
Peter says 100% agree with Keith, which is interesting. So the question then is, we can talk about WordPress and what's happened till the cows come home. What about the future? So, like, what should be happening going forward from here? And I think my take on this is that there is zero. I mean, someone, I think, was it Yoast and I can't remember the other person.
Param.
That's it. Was asking for to lead one of the releases, I think, and start, taking this forward as a bit of a leadership thing. And I think there is 0% chance that Matt Mullenweg is going to allow that to happen. Like you said, he wants to run this thing and he wants to make the decisions, and he will forever. I don't think that's ever going to happen. So if someone wants to decide on a different form of governance and all that stuff, they're going to have to fork it. That's the only way of doing that, 100%. Is to say, look, we're going to fork WordPress, we're going to call it New Press, and let's do that from there. I just don't think that's going to happen, though, because I think it needs a big player to do it. There's no point like you or me or smaller players doing it. It needs a big player.
Why does it need a big player?
Because it needs a lot of investment and commitment to run a WordPress.org. Look after it.
What investment does it need?
Well, it needs I don't actually know to build it. Is .org open source? Like, can we go and grab all the code from .org and say just use it?
I don't know, but haven't like WP Engine for instance already kind of done a mirror of the plugin repo? So like that bit's done, Yeah, but I don't know what the infrastructure actually is and how much work goes into the behind the scenes infrastructure rather than what goes on in core, for example. So
like the number of requests it gets for a start must be huge. So it's got to have an infrastructure to handle that, hasn't it? I don't think it's as an easy a task as it perhaps seems. It's a bigger task, I think, to look after that for 43% of the web, potentially, obviously.
It won't be 43% of the web, though.
Well, not to start with, yeah.
And there's so many questions, aren't there? So there's the governance thing. Like Courtney said there, would you be happy to join WP Engine version of WordPress if they made it? That also sounds scary to me. It actually sounds scary to me as well. I don't want WP Engine to lead this. I don't really want WordPress version 2 to be in the hands of private equity. So no, I wouldn't be happy with that. I think it needs to be community-led. But what would it look like? Do we start from WordPress or like? Cause I think ideally you want this to be a fresh start and just be like, this actually isn't WordPress. Then suddenly you've lost the whole plugin ecosystem. If you're saying we're going to do something new, it's going to be like WordPress. But the hope I have, right, for a fork. Do you know what? I don't want a fork. I want Matt to wise up and start acting like an adult. That's what I want to happen. And I want us to kind of get back to where we were. I'm actually happy with him being the benevolent dictator for life, but he needs to bring back the benevolent bit for me. So that's what I actually want to happen. But if Matt is just going to keep being 2024 25 version of Matt, then I do probably want to see a fork. But yeah, I just don't, and I've got hope for it because you say it's going to need a massive investment. Yes, it might, but other website platforms have come along since WordPress existed and done okay. Like, we don't need to be, as a fork, we wouldn't need to be aspiring to 43% of the web. We could be something a little bit different. I don't know what that is, but like the other companies come along and shake things up. There's other CMSs out there. There's other platforms like, what's the one called? Like there's Framer. I've never even used it. What's the other one? Not Squarespace and Wix. There's like another one that came along recently. It's really famous. Can't remember. Like these things have come along and made a bit of an impact. Like it can be done. But
I don't know. So Matt says here, at the end of the day, I don't think a fork of WordPress with new leadership will be compelling enough for millions of sites to change to it. I kind of agree. Like, it's a big decision to move
we
away
don't need
from
them
this
all.
one. It says, in my opinion, it has to be a new open source project built from scratch.
Right.
And I don't disagree with that. But if that is the case, that's where it requires massive investment and commitment, because you're going to build something as big as WordPress from scratch. All of the stuff that WordPress has in it, that's a big commitment to do it. So I'm not sure where we go from here.
60-odd thousand plugins to try to recreate, or like to get even close to kind of feature parity and stuff. It just doesn't.
This gets launched, next month. It's called New Press, and it starts from scratch, and it's this new thing.
Start from scratch.
All of the stuff we have solutions for, we won't.
I think I will be in the same situation as the same reason we don't go to these other CMSs. Is because they're not as good as WordPress. So like it would have to be as good almost on day one, which is where forking works. But
it is. It's the same on day one when the fork happens. It's exactly the same piece of software than the one you've left behind.
Did you see? I think it was one of Matt's tweets about saying like all these armchair critics, blah blah blah. How about talking to the guy that did it, as in made WordPress successful? And there was all this stuff underneath saying, oh right, so it was just you. It was just you then, Matt. He's positioned himself recently, well, maybe not recently, as this kind of, I don't know, product development god. He's built this like amazing bit of software. I'd argue actually that the software is pretty shit. Like there's a lot in WordPress that isn't great. He's been working on Gutenberg for 9 years, and it's not amazing, is it? So, like, is he a really good product lead? Like, I'm not actually convinced he is. The success of WordPress has been down to the people in the community and the businesses in the ecosystem that have built all of the plugins and themes that have filled in all the gaps.
Which I suppose
that's why WordPress is good.
But I suppose he will say he has guided that to be successful and fostered that to happen.
I would argue not, because certainly early on there was people who were in the premium space that I don't think Matt really wanted that early on, like the whole premium plugin and premium theme world to develop. So I don't think he was the visionary that saw how that was going to really work. I think the whole like make WordPress do 80% of what people need and let plugins kind of do the rest. I think that was the good vision, and making it so extensible was the visionary part, and the fact that he truly believes in open source and democratizing publishing, all that stuff, he deserves a massive credit for. He has like led this project for 20 years to something that is like a household name practically. He does deserve credit for like what he's done. I just think today I just really think it feels like he's just lost the plot a little bit, and he is just not in a good place. He might argue he's in a great place, like he always does. He's always like, oh, I'm perfectly fine. Everything's fine. I'm calm. But the way he's getting on online does not really jive with that for me. But there we go. That's where we're at.
Well, I think on that note, we should wrap up this episode. Yeah, we'll see what happens in the coming future.
Hopefully no more drama. He tends to drop something on a Saturday. He tends to drop things at weekends. I don't know if you've noticed that. There's like a Saturday night bit of tweet bomb. But so we'll see. We'll see what we're talking about next week.
That won't be his Saturday night, though, will it? That'll be his Saturday afternoon, I would imagine, if it's on Saturday.
maybe. Yeah.
Anyway, right, let's wrap it up. Thank you very much to everyone for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed the episode and the discussions that we had. Thank you for everyone jumping into the comments who was watching it live and having a discussion and letting us know your thoughts. That is always really appreciated. If you've enjoyed the episode, please like the video And of course, make sure you're subscribed and you will get notified if you've rung the notification bell for the next episode, which usually, most of the time, comes out on a Friday at 1:30. That's UK time. Anyway, other than that, we'll see you next week for the next episode. Bye-bye.
See you soon, folks. Bye.